There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 163. Today in the show, Dan and I are diving into an in-depth discussion of our goals, our hopes, and our hit lists for the 2017 hunting season. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today we had a great guest lined up for our episode, but something came up. He was not able to join us, so you are stuck with just me and Dan.
And viewership goes straight down to
No, it's going to be good though, Dan, I promise, because if anybody can sit and BS, it's you and me, I think. If there's anyone I know, I think we can pull it off. But it kind of works out well, because just before we started to record the original planned episode, I was thinking, man, I want to get one of our, in the past years, we've always done an episode that I've kind of titled Goals, Hopes, and Hit Lists, where like just before the season, we talk all about all those three things, the hit list, the goals, the hopes, etc., etc. So this could be a good opportunity to do that. We could dive into detail on all of our thoughts of the upcoming season, specific goals, talk more about some of the deer we're after, some of our plans and stuff. And I don't know, kids. I mean, you like to talk about your kids. We can talk about that. What do you think?
Bore people to death.
Does that sound good?
I'm down. You know me, man. I'm down for absolutely whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's you said that a lot in college, didn't you?
Well, I tell you what, that's why I'm in the position that I'm in sometimes.
So I have some interesting news to share. Can I tell you some news?
Son of a man, I know. I already know what it is because you already told me.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell the Wired to Hunt Nation, right? But there's a little part of me that hates you for what you're about to say.
Don't hate me, Dan. Don't.
Well, I don't hate you. But I'll tell you what, it is awesome.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited about it. And if it helps at all, I kind of hate you every time you show trail camera pictures of Bucksnow, Iowa. So this is like we're evening out a little bit, maybe.
Mutual hate.
Yeah, mutual hate. So what you already know and what I'll share with everybody else is my hunting plans for this September have gotten changed a little bit. So like we've talked about in the past, I was planning on going to Montana. Well, I'm in Montana right now, but I was planning on hunting here for antelope and whitetail the first week of September, and then going to North Dakota and hunting whitetails the second week of September. Well, I got an email last week with an invitation for a different plan for the first week of September. So I am going to be going on an Alaskan caribou hunt with Steve Ranella.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm gonna go to the Great White North to Alaska. We're gonna chase some caribou. We're gonna be out in kind of central, kind of around the Alaska range, and it's gonna be a heck of an adventure.
Now
pumped.
the Alaska range is way up there, right?
So that's the Brooks Range is the far northern range. The Alaska range is more along the southern, not far southeast, but kind of the southern interior. I'm not exactly sure of where we're going yet, but somewhere in that central south type of region. It's Alaska. That's all I know.
So here's what happened. What do you do? Call you up and go, Mark, do you want to go to yes?
Yeah, basically.
So before you could even say Alaska, you're like, yep.
Yeah, you need say no more. I'm in.
Right.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Like,
that's so cool.
I like we talked about earlier this year, I was thinking about trying to do a caribou hunt. Me and my buddy Andy were thinking about trying to go this fall, and then like the logistics just got really difficult, and I didn't think I could pull it off this year, so I bailed on that, and then decided to do the whitetail trip out west. Then this kind of just dropped out of nowhere, which is perfect. I'll get to learn from the best, and then maybe future years I'll be able to plan my own trip. But this is going to be a really awesome introduction to Alaska, and Steve and Giannis and all the guys over there are great, so it'll be fun too, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Caribou with a bow is definitely on my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think you were on the episode. Maybe you had to leave early, but were you on our episode with Giannis Patelis last year? You were.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think you had to leave at the very end, because at the very end I asked him, I was like, hey, I want to do my first Alaska trip next year. What would you recommend? And his recommendation of if you want the ultimate Alaskan experience, again, you can only pick one thing, probably the best of it all would be trying to do a caribou hunt, because you get to see so much terrain, you get to see so many animals. It's like a very true Alaska experience. So it worked out kind of cool that I got the invite to do just that. So it's going to make my whitetail trip a little bit more of a challenge now, because I'm going to basically the first like 8-9 days of my trip that I have kind of bucketed out to be out west is now going to be caribou. So I'm going to be left with like 7 or 8 days to try to fill a Montana antelope tag, which I did draw finally. So a Montana antelope tag, a Montana whitetail tag, and a North Dakota whitetail tag, all in like 7 days.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to happen.
That's a good problem to have, man.
Yeah, I can't complain. Because hopefully I'll have a filled caribou tag already in my pocket and in my freezer. So I can't. Can you? Yeah. My wife's mad at me though. She's like, I don't know what the heck you're gonna do with a caribou mount in our house. Our house isn't big enough for that. You're gonna have to build a barn to put all this stuff in. So again, like you said, a good problem to have.
Well, I tell you what, unless it's an absolute giant caribou that you harvest, you could just do a skull mount.
Well, that's
next to your elk.
Next to my elk. That's what I'm like debating. Yeah. Is like, okay, do I get a shoulder mount? Because a caribou is like, I mean, I don't know how many times I'm ever going to get to hunt a caribou again. This could be a once in a lifetime thing. I don't know. And they're such a beautiful animal. Yeah. So it's like, do I get it done right? Or, but that does then add this whole
that makes a good point.
But more challenge, right? Because now we got to get it caped in the field, and we got to bring that all back. And I don't know. I think the logistics of, bringing all that kind of stuff back to the state or back to the 48, I don't know. There's just a lot of logistics with trying to get all that stuff from Alaska back to Montana, from Montana back to Michigan. So I don't know. I got a lot.
I think some of those
still.
Yeah, I think some of those logistical problems are one of those. We'll cross it when we get there type of deals. I mean, yeah, obviously on a trip like that, you got to plan at some point. But I think, hey, we shoot it. All right, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I want to cape it out and keep it. Okay. The drive, take it back into town, give it to a taxidermist. He'll do the work and then ship it to you for an ungodly amount.
Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be some high costs with getting all that stuff back. But like you said, again, that's a good problem to have, right? Because if I'm dealing with that problem, it means I just shot a caribou, which, man, I'm kind of like, you watch these like Discovery Channel specials or something of like just these herds of hundreds or thousands of caribou going across the tundra. Like I've been the other day I went on a hike. I did a day hike just by myself. And it was definitely the hardest day hike I've ever done. But I kind of wanted to see, like, could I do it? Like, it was one of those things, like, it was like a mental toughness challenge. I was like, okay, there's this hike. I wanted to summit this mountain called Static Peak. It'd be a 17-mile trip, 17 miles round trip in one day, and pushing 6,000 feet of elevation gain. And usually like a 2,000-foot elevation gain, 8 or 9 mile hike is like a serious hike. And I'm going to try to like double that. So it's like, this is going to be really tough, but I want to see if I can do it. So the whole time I was doing it, all I thought about was this caribou hunt, and just like thinking about thousands of caribou coming over a hill, and like, I just got to keep going, just got to keep going, just got to keep going, because I got to be ready for that trip.
Right.
So it's been on my mind a lot. I can't stop thinking about just, I don't know, what it's going to be like, or flying, coming in a bush plane, flying in and just looking over this wide expanse. I mean, I don't know. Like every time I'm out west, I always sit and I think about, man, how awesome would it have been out here 200 years ago, when it was still untouched and wild. But up in Alaska, it's kind of like Montana was 150 years ago, There's still massive areas just completely untouched. So that's going to be sweet to see. I'm stoked.
Man, I'm literally visualizing it in my head right now. Like, it's going to be a movie. Plus, you're going to be with Steve Rinella, so he's going to document that for his show, I have a feeling. And it's going to be, you're going to have it forever.
Yeah, I don't know what all the details are of everything yet, but one way or another, it's going to be, yeah, you're right. It's going to be awesome. And I'm going to try to document it as much as I can myself and get lots of good photos and write in a journal so I can, like you said, I want to remember it all. Hopefully it's something I can do again and again, but you just never know. I mean, this is a big kind of trip, so. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, man, I'm so jacked for you.
Thanks, dude. I'm pumped. And we're going to have some good stories to talk about here on the podcast, too. So that's the first week of September. And then that second week, then I'll be doing the whirlwind tour of North Dakota and Montana. And we'll have to do a podcast that week while I'm out there hunting. And we'll talk about how Alaska went and how my trips are going. And hopefully I'll have a few stories.
Absolutely, so man.
That's my latest. So before we go any further, we need to take a quick break for a word from our partners at Sitka Gear and take a listen to our Sitka story today. So here's producer Spencer Newharth.
For this week's Sitka story, we're joined by Sitka ambassador Nick Kramer, who tells us about a thrilling archery brown bear hunt.
A few years back, I headed up to Alaska for an archery brown bear hunt. It was actually my third try to get one. Had some bad luck in the past, and on this hunt, we were hunting late July, early August, if I remember right, and trying to catch the bears on the salmon as they're cruising up and down trying to fish. So we basically take positions along the streams and kind of wait for them to come by, an ambush style approach. One evening, I'm sitting there, and I was just kind of sitting outside where we had camped. And I'm sitting in a little chair along the river, reading a book. Sun's hitting me pretty hard. I'm kind of dozing in out kind of thing, and I hear a small snap and kind of look up, and there's a cub brown bear about 5 feet away from me, and just everything in me, just all my senses all at once told me to get up and head back to camp. So I started hauling the mail back to camp and got there screaming bear, 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 and guide and buddies that I'm hunting with are hollering at the bear, and I didn't quite know it, but that sow was pretty much on my tail all the way back. So that was kind of the more exciting part of the hunt at that point. But that same evening, set up in the exact same spot for some reason, sitting there, my buddy is guiding me and just waiting for bears. And out of nowhere, this brown bear comes out of the brush along the stream. And I'd seen a lot of brown bears over the last 3 years, and this was bigger and looked different than anything I had seen in the past. And he's just trudging along the beach and end up drawing back 31 yards, put a good shot. He took off down the beach, made a big roar, lost sight of him. Guide Ron turns around, looks at me and says, "Dead bear." And after 3 years and so many trips up there and sitting in the pouring rain in my storm front, finally had my brown bear, and it was about the best feeling in the world.
On Nick's hunt, which took place in Alaska, he was wearing Sitka's Stormfront rain gear. If you'd like to create a Sitka story of your own, or to learn more about Sitka's technical hunting apparel, visit sitkagear.com.
Do you have any
cool beans?
Good news on par with that?
I'm just trying to follow that that you're going to go on a Alaskan hunt with. That's like the opener for a rock band, just really crushing it, and then the main card has to follow that, and God, who was it? This was like in the late 60s or 70s. Jimi Hendrix opened for somebody, and then after Jimi Hendrix played, the other band didn't want to go out because they knew they could not do better than what he did.
Right.
So they just said, screw it, we're not going to perform, and we're never going to play with Jimmy again.
Well, don't hang up on the podcast, okay? No, dude, but yeah, I mean, that's awesome. But you got some big whitetail stuff ahead of you. Iowa, man, you're gonna kill a big one this year, I think. Our episode today is about hopes, hit lists, goals, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're in your wildest dreams this year, Dan. What would be your wildest dream coming true in your Iowa whitetail season? If you could like paint the perfect picture, I'm curious to hear what that would be for the 2017 season.
Right. So, well, I have to throw in some details that often I wouldn't throw in, but because I do have a kid coming September 28th, or somewhere probably before that, I'm gonna say that my wildest dream, if I could wish the perfect season right now, it would be that I kill a 200-inch buck the very first sit of the year. But obviously that's not going to happen.
No, hold on. Would that really be the best situation? Like, I feel like that'd be a little bit. I mean, yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, let me rewind a bit. Which would you rather do? Because if that happened, your hunting season's done on day one. Would you rather do that? Would you rather kill a 200-incher on day one, but only hunt one day the whole season in Iowa? Or would you rather kill a 200-inch buck on like the last day of your rut vacation? So you got in all this hunt, you grinded it out, but then you got the ultimate reward at the end. Which would you prefer in the long run, looking back?
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna make a movie out of it, obviously the grind is what we all come to love, and then kill them on the back end. But I got a very impatient wife at home too, so I have to make sure that I cover all the bases. I got 3 kids, so I'm gonna have to make sure that all the bases are covered. Maybe have some daycare provided, because if you think for 1 second that my wife is going to let me go away and she's going to take care of an infant and 2 basically assholes for 2 or 3 weeks, you're out of your mind, and I'd be out of my mind too. So I have to play the cards extremely tight, very conservative, and if I want to maximize my hunting this year, it's going to have to be with some assistance from somebody else, whether that's my dad's retired, or if it's having to hire a babysitter and come in the evenings to help take care of some stuff. But and at the same time, I don't want to be. I mean, I want to hunt as much as possible, and I'm going to have to hunt closer to home this year. But I also don't want to be a dick, right? And have my passion cause sadness or unhappiness for somebody else, if that makes sense.
No, so, for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be a play it by ear thing, because just like every year, it starts off fine and dandy, and then you get the text, when are you coming home? And then from there, it's all downhill.
Dude, I know. I hate that too. It's like,
yeah.
My situation is a little different, but still, like, lots of times, like, we talk about this stuff all ahead of time, and like, are you okay with this plan? She says yes. I'm like, are you okay with this plan? She says, yep, it's all good. I take off, and then like 3 days in, she's like, I'm getting, like, when are you coming home? Why aren't you back yet? That kind of stuff. And exactly what you said, you just, like, my stomach just sinks, and like, oh gosh. And like, I get like that uncomfortable feeling. I'm not like the person that is okay with like knowing that she's pissed back home at me, and like I'm not the type who can just be like, I don't care, I'm gonna do my thing. Like, it just like gnaws at me. So like 2 years ago when I was hunting in Iowa, that kind of situation happened where like I had this plan to be out. I was gonna hunt for 2 weeks, Iowa and Ohio, and I thought she was fine with it. But then like 4 days into the Iowa trip or something, and I'd been hunting beforehand and stuff too, like I could see that I'd like pissed her off somehow, and I could just like tell like I'd be coming home to something kind of gnarly in 2 weeks if I stayed out there the whole time. So I bailed. I bailed and I went home for like a day and a half. I drove home from Iowa, went all the way home, and like kind of surprised her. And she's like, "You're stupid. You shouldn't have come back. I didn't really need you back here. Like, why'd you do that?" But I think it was a good thing. I think it helped because then it was better after that. But I know that feeling.
Right.
And it's good. I think it's been really good for me and for other people to hear about your experiences and like your challenges sometimes trying to balance all this, because it's a reality for all of us, or most of us at some point, right? Like, unless you're single and have no other obligations, balancing this passion is one of the most important things. We have to walk that line and figure out a way to make it work for all parties, but it's not easy.
Right. And that's the thing, man. Like, the rut is the rut, right? And shit can go down at any time during the rut. I mean, at noon at 75 degrees, I've had encounters with 170-inch deer, right? So I just have to make sure that I am playing every hunt as efficient and as optimal as humanly possible. So if the weather's really hot, and that's why, like, looking on a calendar, I probably won't even see a tree stand. If I had to guess, I probably won't even see a tree stand this year until November. I think it's 3rd or 5th, somewhere in between there. So well, and
that pains me.
But
can't you get a babysitter for a couple times, like in October?
Yeah, but I mean, still, I'm not there, right? I mean, dad and the husband are not there. And as much as I want to be out there, have you ever thought about how selfish bow hunting or hunting in general is if you're not doing it with the person? So, like, my wife will never be a hardcore bow hunter like me, so I'm not going to be able to share that with her. She can come shed hunting with me. She can come turkey hunting with me. But if I said, "All right, sweetie, huge cold front coming through. It's going to be 30 degrees in the stand. We're going to sit there all day." She would say, "No, that will not happen." And so there's a portion of this passion that we have that is really selfish, and we are putting everybody else on a back burner while this one time a year comes around and we kind of drop everything to go do what our passion is. Now, my wife understands that I have this passion, but even understanding can turn to stress over a period of time, especially when you have a variety of things causing the stress, like a crying baby, or or your son dumped eggs all over the floor, or your daughter spilled fingernail polish all over the carpet. Those are easily triggers that stress. And as that stress starts to build, when daddy, they're literally a single parent, and I can understand that stress, but that's why I'm trying to get as much help as possible by maybe getting a babysitter. So
that's good.
But it's kind of selfish.
No, I hear you. It's you're right. I mean, it takes but I mean, everyone's got their thing. Everyone's got something that, but you're right. You got to balance it, and you got to keep all parties in mind. And I know, I know that's a unique challenge. Just bums me out to hear that you're not going to hunt for the first 5 weeks of the season. But you got to reap the you got what's the word? You got to sleep in the bed that you made, Dan, when you didn't tie things up after 2 kids.
Well, I tell you what, sleeping in the bed I made is the reason why I got these kids.
That's what I'm saying. Oh man. Okay. Well. So if your dream scenario is killing a 200-inch buck on the first day of your season, then you're saying you're hoping that you would kill a 200 on like November 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal.
Well, is that the goal? Like, okay,
I mean,
that's
not the goal. I mean, that's not the goal. But that's the daydream we all think about. Yeah, that's the
daydream. Okay, so let me give you my daydream, and then let's talk reality. How about that?
Right.
Okay, so my daydream for my season would be to fill every one of my tags.
Right.
So the caribou tag, and then somehow in 7 days kill an antelope, a Montana whitetail, drive to North Dakota, kill a mature North Dakota whitetail, get home, take a week and a half off or 2 weeks off, and then October 1st kill Holyfield on opening night of Michigan season, and then have a second Michigan tag I can fill on public land or my northern Michigan property with my family up there. Right. And I just, with one of those, I like to kill a 3-year-old. Holyfield, I think, is 5. So that'd be a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old in Michigan. And then I'd have an Ohio tag, and in Ohio I'd like to kill a 4-year-old. If I could do that, that would be Ohio, 2 in Michigan, North Dakota, Montana, Alaska, antelope. That'd be 7 tags. That's my daydream, just to fill 7 tags by mid-November.
Does your daydream also include going to Home Depot to buy an additional freezer for all the meat you're going to have?
Yeah, seriously. That's a very legitimate question. I know I'm not going to fill in nearly any of those, so I don't think it's going to be a problem I'll have. But again, right. That would be a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
I don't know. In Montana, I do, like we talked earlier this year, like I want to hold out for like a really good deer in Montana this year. I might change that a little bit just because I'm trying to pack stuff in. I might like stick with like a representative mature buck, still a mature buck in both those states. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit chaotic, kind of crazy. But that's my daydream. So that's my crazy dream. I've got one other crazy dream that we've never talked about on the podcast before. And this is just for fun. Like as you and I both, like, you know, we talk about scores of bucks sometimes, but it's not what it's all about for us, of course. That's just kind of a fun thing to look at deer and see what they score and kind of talk about them. But you know my buddy Corey, one of my really good buddies here in Michigan that I hunt with a lot. He killed his first Boone and Crockett buck. He killed a 170 when he was 30 years old in Iowa. This was a few years ago. And when he killed that buck, we always kind of have like a kind of a friendly competition between each other. I said, all right, then I have to kill a booner by the time I'm 30. So that was like 4 years ago. I have not killed a booner yet. So this is my last year in order to meet that bet. I have to kill a booner this year, my 30th year season. If I don't, Corey wins. So that is my other dream, is to try to kill a 170 this year so that Corey doesn't have bragging rights over me.
That's kind of funny you say that, because on my 30th birthday is the day that I hit shipwreck and never found him.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's kind of, it's just, I don't know. That was kind of crazy.
That is. 30 is like the year that big things happen, I guess. Can you believe I'm going to be 30? I'm going to be old, Dan.
Yeah,
I'm going to be really old.
You're gonna be old, all right. You're going to be old.
What's it feel like? Do your knees start hurting immediately upon that day?
Oh shit, dude! My knees have been hurting since I was 25.
Oh man!
I've had 2 knee surgeries, one from football and one from playing rugby, and then like I broke my jaw. So like I'm withered.
Yeah, you're broken parts.
Right. That's why I got to get out and do my western hunts here pretty soon before, like, unless I'm gonna start taking sky lifts to the top of the mountain.
I'll wheel you around in like a push cart or something on our next elk trip. Come on, Dan, just a little further. Oh man. Okay. What do you think about that? My booner by 30. Do you think I can pull it off?
No.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Well, statistics are against you, right? I mean,
yes.
I know that there's booners in Montana. There's booners in North Dakota. There's booners in Michigan. But statistics are against you. But as we all know, statistics don't mean shit in the rut. So a hot doe could bring anything by at any time.
Yeah. And in
Michigan.
Yeah, in Michigan, it's probably not going to happen in Michigan. I think my best chance is Ohio. Ohio is a spot where it could happen.
Oh, that's right, Ohio.
Because I've had a booner on camera down there every year but our first year, I think. So there's a legitimate chance there. So,
yeah.
And again, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care about score, but it's just kind of a fun challenge to throw out there myself.
Everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about it.
So I might I'm very fortunate, right, to have all these different opportunities this year, and I'm just like kind of pinching myself and knocking on wood, and it's crazy. I'm very thankful for this opportunity this year to go do a bunch of stuff. So I might, though, be a little more picky in Ohio than usual, just because because I've got a bunch of other hunts scheduled. So I'm going to try to kill mature buck in Michigan, Montana, North Dakota, and then Ohio. I don't need to rush it. I can just, I can kind of play it out. If there seems to be like a really great buck there, maybe this is the year that I'm particularly picky in Ohio. Last year I killed the first relatively mature buck that I got eyes on because it had been tough and I wanted to fill that tag. This year I think I'm going to wait it out and see. Who knows? Maybe I can make Corey eat his words and have me match him. So I don't know.
I think that's a good move to hold out, because you're already going to be doing a lot of hunting, right? Yeah. There's a chance there's a chance you get your buck in Montana. There's a chance you get your buck in is North Dakota going to be kind of like a spot and stalk type deal, or is that going to be tree stand, river bottom type stuff?
It'll be river bottom stuff too. Yep. I think they're very similar type situations. There's a couple different rivers with cottonwoods down the bottom and willow bushes and stuff like that, and kind of the same type of thing I hunted last year. So you could get down and move around a little bit, but it'll probably mostly be trees. But lots of glassing, probably going up on hills and scouting and glassing, and then identifying where they're moving through, and then sneaking in, hanging, and hunting.
Yep. So, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's my dream. What about
reality?
Yeah, let's talk reality. Real talk. What do you really think? Well, let's talk goals. Like, okay, to have your 2017 season, and we talk about this every once in a while throughout the year leading up to now. So I know we've probably touched on some of the stuff, but like where we're at now, it's just before the season. What's a successful 2017 season look like for you, and what are like your handful of goals you'd like to achieve? Whether it be specific, like killing a buck, or like I don't know if there's any more intangible stuff that you want to achieve too.
Yeah, well, I mean, my goal is the days that I am hunting, and I do get away to my main farm, are going to be they have to be all day sits, right? I mean, they just have to be. Then once I start maximizing my time in the timber in the good rut locations, and I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to play the trail camera game. I'm going to check those on a rotation, and then I'm going to see what bucks are cruising the area, calling home, and make my plan off that. But as far as what I'm looking for, what a successful season is, for me, obviously any time I can sit in a tree stand and enjoy Mother Nature is a win. We both know that.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I mean, some of my favorite seasons have resulted in eating my tag. Like 2011, I had one of the best seasons I've ever had, and just saw so many deer cruising and saw so many cool things, and never tagged out. But from an actual animal standpoint, I don't know, man. More than likely, here's what will happen. I'm going to be in a mood, whatever day this mood is in, whatever my mood is at the time. If my mood is, hey man, I got to get home back to the family, I'm going to shoot the first 4-year-old that probably walks by. But then there's this mood that I get in sometimes where I want to shoot a 4-year-old or older. That won't change. It's going to be a mature buck. That's my goal. But if I'm there, depending on my mood, there is something where I may pass a 4-year-old because he doesn't have big antlers. You know what I mean? So if that opportunity presents itself, if I'm going in after a buck, let's say that, I get the opportunity to do that too, and I pass a smaller 4-year-old to get to a different one, I think this year I might do a little more passing like in previous years, if the opportunity presents itself and what the mood is, right? If it's day 4 of the hunt and I've already got the text that says, when are you going to be home? man, I'd hate to be the first 4-year-old buck that walks by my stand after I got that text. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
So, and I'm gonna go into this season just really patient and really with no expectations, because I feel that once you give yourself expectations, at some point you're just leading up to failure, and you become stressed if the time's running down and you don't meet that goal, or you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's kind of like there's two sides to that coin. It's like there's something really awesome about having goals going into a hunting season or something, like the challenge and the chess match or whatever, trying to achieve a goal and that feeling of accomplishment when you do. Like, that's one of my favorite things about hunting. But at the same time, if you let that go too far, and we've talked about this a lot in past years, right? Sometimes you let it go too far, and then, like you said, you get overly stressed about it, and it takes the fun out of what hunting's supposed to be too. So it's like, how do you it's like that line again. You got to walk that line. Goals are great, but if you go too far with it, sometimes you can miss what's most important.
Absolutely. And in the past, when I was chasing shipwreck and I went 4 years. I just remember passing a 4-year-old 150-inch 10-pointer one day, and I look back at that and I was just like, "Whoa, you're stupid for doing that, right?" I mean, that's the big. If I would have killed that deer, it would have been the biggest deer I've ever shot. And I had this, I had a chance, and I had a real chance at going after some big old deer, but I was kind of hyper focused on one animal, and I don't know if that'll ever happen again. It may, but as of right now, it won't. That I can't do that, and I don't want to do that. I just want to enjoy myself. I harvested last year, so I really think that I'm okay with whatever cards are played in front of me. If that means eating my tag, it means eating my tag. I mean, I'm going to be selective, but I'm not going to. I don't know. It's just like, for me, I feel like I'm going to be in a mood. I'm going to be like, there's a mood that I have to be into. Like, am I in a straight up kill mode, or am I in a, hey, let's just wait and see what happens mode? You know what I mean? It's like,
I was going to say, is there any buck that you already know is in the area that made it, or that you think might have made it, that if you start getting like good intel on this buck, whether that be camera pictures or some encounters with him, is there any buck that if you had that intel that what would cause you to start passing like 4-year-olds or like multiple decent 4-year-olds? Is there a deer that would make you all of a sudden say, okay, you know what? I said I wanted to kill a decent buck, but now this is happening.
Right. So, you mean like as far as past history?
Yeah. Like, is there one of these deer that might make you say, well, you know what? I'm getting this buck in daylight. I saw him twice already. Now I'm going to pass everything for the next week and a half or whatever because I really want to kill X. Is there any deer that could do that to you that you know of?
Yeah. And right now I think it's just one, and that would be that dork buck. I have a couple pictures of him this year, and there's another buck too that may make me do it. But so basically 2 bucks that I have on trail camera so far, but it would have to be pretty consistent, pretty wired down. Like, I know he's going to be coming out of this woodlot tonight, and I'm going to set up on one of these trails, and he's going to decide to come on one of these trails or not. And if another one comes, if I have solid concrete evidence and daylight sightings and daylight pictures those 2 bucks,
which is the other one? Which is the other one other than dork?
That really big 10-pointer. He's got like a 1 split brow tine.
Oh yeah.
The big one. I'm looking through my trail camera pictures right now, and then obviously there's dork. He's like a 7 or 8-year-old this year.
Have you ever found one of his sheds?
Nope. I think I am on the outside of his home range. Gotcha. Like that he just comes in on certain crop rotations at different times of the year. I have another, like, there's this one buck that his head looks as big as like a steer head, right? Just a giant cow head. with probably now he's got a funky rack, but if it was the same on both sides, he'd be like in the 160s. I'd love to see him, but again, it's just I'm going to go out and hunt if that is more clear.
I hear you.
But I'm happy either way.
Yeah. What about Gordon Bombay? I know you don't know if he's back yet or not, but he's right. Gordon Bombay is the super wide buck that.
Right.
Now I want to make sure I'm not getting these confused in my head. Is that the same buck that Ryan hit in the antlers, or did this buck show up new the next year?
Yeah, this is a different buck. That buck was around in 2014. So Gordon Bombay has been around 2013, 14, 15. I was looking at old pictures of him the other night. But
he's the one that won the trail camera contest 2 years ago.
Yep, he won the trail camera contest, and he went down but got wider. His antlers kind of shrunk but got wider. So on this year's crop rotation is when I have pictures of him coming up towards the top of the property. So I have a couple pictures of him on like October 7th, but it's during the night. So, and like I always say, a trail camera picture of a buck in the middle of the night is the same as not having a trail camera picture of that buck at all, because you shouldn't make your decisions based off of a 3 a.m. or a midnight trail camera picture, because that buck is, especially if he is on a pattern, if you move in to chase a buck whose pattern is 3 a.m., then all you're doing is ruining that area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So typically Gordon Bombay is on this, on the completely opposite side of the property. I doubt he lives there. Late October, he comes through every year, but it's at like midnight. I don't have any daylight pictures of him except July of last year. So that's why I haven't checked that trail camera picture, that trail camera down where I always get the pictures of him yet. I'm going to wait. And the only other than that buck, who knows if he's made it or not, but the only other thing that I'm really working on this year is access through cricks, because, and I've said this a lot on the podcast, I feel that when I drive through the property, through the one direction, I am completely pushing deer back to the bedding areas faster than if I come from the other side and hunt, and I actually hunt the property from the opposite side and let that natural movement come back to the bedding areas as opposed to like pushing them.
Right.
So,
right. I think that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's just following through at that point.
That's the trick, right?
Right. Right. And being patient. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Realistically, so, going back to the deer, it's going to be my goal is always going to be a 4-year-old, until the 4-year-old someday dry up. But it's always going to be a 4-year-old. And depending on what the antlers, or what mood I'm in, could depend on what 4-year-old I take a crack at. And I'm not guaranteed a 4-year-old. However, I'm looking at a trail camera picture right now of what I'm guessing is a 2-year-old, probably 145 class buck.
Good Lord.
So 10-pointer with split brows. So that's one of those bucks where this year I know he's small enough I wouldn't shoot him, but let's say he's a 3-year-old at 160, let's say. I hope I don't see him.
Yeah.
I just don't want him to even tempt me.
That's a tough in that moment it's really hard to make the logically think in your head, okay, that's a young buck. Like lots of times you're just so fired up.
Right. Yep. Especially if their neck's all swollen up and they got that mass from the rut, like the pre-rut.
Oh yeah.
So what about you? What's realistic on your end?
Well, before we get to that, before we talk about those goals and expectations for the season, I want to take a quick break for a word from our partners at Whitetail Properties. And Spencer Newharth has another Whitetail Properties land specialist with us today to share some whitetail wisdom.
This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Rich Baugh, a land specialist out of southeastern Iowa. And Rich is going to be telling us about how he patterns mature bucks without educating them.
So what I like to do is figure out where a buck's living And so during the late summer and early fall months, I'll run trail cameras around my farm, probably one for every 40 to 60 acres, and try to figure out where the different mature bucks are living. You really have to keep an eye on that, once October and November get here, because they often tend to disperse and move around a little bit. But I still use cameras, and I have them in areas where I'm not going to disturb the deer to check them. One of the things that's key to me is I just don't pressure deer in early October. I figure out where they're living, where they feed, and then really don't hunt them until the last week of October, first week of November, when I know they're going to be on their feet before dark and still on their feet after daylight. Otherwise, you risk educating them and making them go nocturnal.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Rich currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/BAW. That's BAUGH.
So realistic, I think. Okay, so if we're talking whitetails, if I could fill one tag on my western trip from Montana or North Dakota, I think that's a realistic goal. That'd be awesome if I could at least fill one tag out there with a mature buck. So I'd like to try to shoot a 4-year-old out there. So my goal would be at least a 4-year-old in one of those two states. And then in Michigan, realistic, if I can kill Holyfield, that's my number one of all goals, is to close that chapter and put all that to rest and kind of just make that happen. We've talked about 1,000 times, so I won't reiterate all the different things going on there. But I think that's
But I have
realistic.
a question.
Oh yeah?
I have a question about that, though.
Okay.
So Holyfield shows up on camera. Doesn't matter what time of day. Let's say it's in the middle of the night and it's like October 1st, right? So he's non-huntable at that point. Are you passing or dedicating an entire season to that buck if he starts to do what he did last year?
Yeah, so here's where my head's at on that. I'm definitely dedicating my season in Michigan to him. But
if he shows up.
Yes, if he shows up. But if I'm out there in mid-October or mid-November, if at some point if a once in a lifetime Michigan buck shows up that I don't know of, that's not Holyfield, I would shoot that buck, but then continue to hunt for Holyfield after that. I've always told myself, on this property where Holyfield is, I'll only take one buck a year there, because it's just an area where there's not many. If there's a mature buck, it's usually the only mature buck in the area any given season, and it's a lot of hunting pressure. There's just not a lot of big old deer. So I've always said, if I take one, that's going to be it. But in this year, if it was like a once in a lifetime Michigan buck, or the biggest Michigan deer I've ever seen, if a 155 4, 5, or 6-year-old buck that I've never seen before all of a sudden shows up in front of me on November 6th and I still haven't killed Holyfield, I'm going to shoot that buck, but then still try to kill Holyfield the rest of the season. But I'm not going to shoot anything borderline. I'm not going to shoot, if there's bucks that I would usually kill in the past, if there's a 4-year-old 130 or something running around, or a 135 or something like that, that's a nice, usually would be a really nice Michigan buck, mature buck. Those deer I'm going to pass on this year, hoping that they'll make it to future years so that I can get Holyfield this year and then have another deer next year. But if it's if it's a monster that just shows up out of nowhere, I will break my rule and try to kill 2 deer on that property. But that's never happened before. I've never seen a monster out there. I've never had a random buck like that show up before, so that's probably not going to happen.
A lot of things have to go right for that to happen.
Yeah. So I think most likely what's going to happen is that I think there's a good chance Holyfield will be back. I think there's a good chance there's going to be a bunch of other people around there that are going to be hunting for him too. So there's a good chance he can get killed by someone else, but there's still, I think, a good chance that I can get a shot at him. I think I've got, we've talked about my plan. We've talked about the habitat improvements I've made. I think all that stuff should put me in about as good of a position as I could ask for, given the set of cards I have. So I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna try my very best, and this year it's definitely Holyfield. I'm not gonna pass Holyfield this year. I don't. It's not gonna be midway through the season, and I'm obviously gonna say, no, I want to see if he can make another year. No, I'm definitely. He's gonna be very mature this year. 3 years of history. I've learned a ton from him. If I can somehow be lucky enough and fortunate enough to get a crack at him, that I'm gonna take advantage of it. So.
Right. I'll tell you what, there's two bucks or stories that I'm following very closely. One of them is yours in Holyfield, and the other one is our buddy Ben and his deer that he's chased for a while, Pork. So
Pork, yes.
Yep. So those are two that I'm following very closely.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we talk about, like hunting for one specific deer or like having a long-term like hunt for a deer. It can be really frustrating. It can be stressful, all those things we talked about earlier. But it's also like it's one of the coolest things I've been able to experience as a hunter too. Like there's something really fun about learning a deer, trying to pick into all the details and like studying all the different trail camera pictures and past encounters. I've got like 2 pages of a notebook filled up with every encounter with Holyfield and the wind direction and the moon and the time of day and the time of year and all this kind of stuff. And like it's just so much fun looking at that and thinking through, okay, why did he do this and why this and how could I take advantage of that? I mean, that geeking out is still one of my absolute favorite things to do. So that's a cool thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
I will if either way, whenever and however Holyfield goes down, I will miss just that very extended big time chess match that's been going on, and hopefully there'll be another one someday. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
Realistically, if I can kill Holyfield, that's the goal. That would be amazing. The other stuff I've got going on in Michigan would be awesome if something pans out up north or in public, but that's pretty unlikely. But I'm gonna give it a shot. We heck, I can't remember if we talked about it last time or not, but have got some more food plot stuff going on at our northern Michigan place. My dad has a friend who's gonna come up with a tractor and help us get some final stuff planted and opened up. So the food plot system that we started 2 years ago, that we got planted finally last year, that really helped us start to finally see some decent deer up there. We've expanded it now this year a little bit. So like we're taking these tiny steps to make things better up there and try to bring that back, which is super cool. So that's fun. And then Ohio, like I said, realistically, I'm gonna try to hold out there, maybe be a little bit more picky than I usually am, but realistically, when it all comes down to it, if I can kill a 4-year-old out there, I'd be super happy. And I think it's possible. I think it's always possible. It's just one of those spots, it's like it's hot and cold. I'll probably hunt 5-6 days and not see a deer, or see like 1 or 2 deer a day and be pissed and frustrated, but then day 7 or whatever, all of a sudden a giant can come strolling through. So that's one of those spots that like you just need extreme patience and like an ability to handle long hours of boredom. So so that's kind of, so I think realistically, if I could fill up my Michigan tag with Holyfield, 1 buck on one of the out-of-state trips in Montana or North Dakota, and then an Ohio buck over the course of the 3-4 month season, that would be awesome. Probably even 2 out of those tags would be 2 out of 4 tags would be a great season. So
Right.
I don't know, man. Talking about all this stuff, I just in like every single episode, I don't know if this is like, I don't know if people think we're crazy because we say this every episode, or if everybody else feels the exact same way. But every time when we're on here talking about this stuff, like I just like my fingers get tingly and I'm like sweating.
Oh, it's
and
adrenaline.
I'm just like, I'm ready. Like I just can't get in the tree soon enough.
Right.
I'm just I just love this stuff so much.
Right.
I love it.
I don't know, man. So I got this map that Ben gave me, and I got the magnets on it. Right.
Oh, you got the Huntera Magna map?
Yeah, the Magna map.
I don't have one of those.
We got to call him up. Say, I'm Mark Kenyon. Give me one.
He's given me so many nice maps, I don't want to ask him for anything more. But that's awesome, dude. So you got the Magna map.
Magna map, right? And it's right in front of my microphone. So I'm I'm literally staring at my property while I record the podcasts. And there's 2 orange, on my map, orange represents tree stand locations. And there are 2 orange magnets that I am literally daydreaming about every time I sit in this chair. And I cut them out already this year. They are just literally sitting there. Like, don't you wish that you could be just a fly in the timber or like have some kind of device that you can fast forward and stop or teleport to your stand and just sit there and wait and see? But these 2 stands are 2 pinch points on the farm that it's like I wonder what kind of movement is going through there and what's going to happen come November.
Uh-huh. All right, so ideal scenario. Tell me about one of these spots. What's your daydream look like at that spot?
All right, so the daydream is I'm walking in the morning, right? I'm following, making sure that this wind, northwest wind, is what I need, and I need on one of the stands is a straight northeast maybe. The other one is just your typical northwest wind. North would work as well, but my scent's going to go down. It's going to go out into a field or into a cattle pasture, and these deer are in a pinch point between a creek and an inside corner of this fence. And I think I told you about that. I went further down the fence and I took a whole bunch of dead wood and dead limbs and stacked and blocked the other entrance so they can't jump into it was a down tree fell over the fence. So I blocked that up. So hopefully that forces them to come around that inside corner again. And there I have a tree stand waiting on one fence crossing. So literally those two stands are hunting one. I'm hunting one trail. That's how tight the pinch point is. Wow. And I mean, they can go down further than that, but a majority of the traffic is coming through these two trails, and it's over a certain period of time. I'm sure they're coming through 24 hours a day through that during the rut. But
so what day is this daydream happening? What's the weather like? What are the conditions like when you're going in here?
Right. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around November. For some reason, 11th pops up in my head. November 11th, deer pops up in my head. I'm sitting in there in a northwest wind. One of those mornings, right, where there's frost on the ground. It's quiet. Like, it's really loud walking to your stand because the leaves are extra crunchy because of the frost on them. And I'm sitting there. I'm facing, let's see, what way is my tree stand facing? It's actually facing east, but I'll be shooting to the west, because I always like to have the tree in between me and where I'm shooting. And the goal is to, hear that.
Yeah.
And then maybe and then you see a doe.
Immediately your heart starts pumping.
Yep. Stand up, grab the bow, turn to this fence crossing, watch the doe jump, and then the buck comes up. You know how deer, they'll walk straight up unless they're running. They'll walk up to it first, stop, and then jump. If like a calm deer will do that.
Yeah.
And then right when he stops, before he crosses that fence,
so you draw back. Oh, you're shooting just before. Okay.
Yep, you shoot him right before he jumps. So that's what I envision. But
what'll actually happen
is I'll shank the shot, hit the fence, and blind the deer.
Oh man, yeah, I hear you there. Right, I'm right there with you. Hey, speaking of shanking the shot, both you and me are going through some changes with our shots and with our archery. We haven't talked about this on the Wired Hunt podcast yet, but we have both in the past, like way in the past, we've both alluded to various issues with rushing shots or maybe a little bit of target panic here and there. Some stuff like that, and so we've talked about different like incremental changes we can make, like saying, okay, we're gonna take a little more time, or we're gonna have like a better shot process or something. But neither one of us have made like really big differences over the course of big changes in the last 3 or 4 years. But now all of a sudden, without even consulting each other, we both have made drastic changes to what we're doing this summer, and we haven't talked about it yet. I think maybe we should talk about that now. What do you think?
Let's do it.
So I guess I'll give my quick update on what's going on for me real fast, and then I'm interested to hear about how you got to this point too. But for me, I got a new Matthews Halon this past year, 32, sweet bow. Took it to the pro shop, got it all set up. But then when I got back and started shooting, I can't remember what happened, but there were 3 different things that happened, and each time I had to go back to the pro shop. Like, my rest had been set too loosely, and so when I got home, the center shot was off and it was all messed up, and so I had to go check it out and get it retuned. So I went back to the shop, and then when I got back, something with what was it? I think my draw length was wrong when I got back. I can't remember all these. There was a draw length issue. There was a rest. The cord on my rest broke. The very first time I forgot to have the peep sight put in, so I had to go back and forth to the pro shop like 3 or 4 different times. So all these different things had happened with the setup of my bow. And when I start shooting the bow, I'm like, I am way inconsistent. Like, I can't get my shot right. Like, I don't know what's going on, and I just couldn't identify, I couldn't diagnose what the issue was because there were so many new things in the shot. Like, it wasn't like I was shooting the old bow I'd been comfortable with, and all of a sudden if my shot started falling apart, I could say, okay, what's changed? But everything changed now, right? It was a new bow, plus I had all these different trips to the pro shop with all these different changes made, and the rest got messed up. Someone had to tie in a new cord a different weird way. My draw length got changed 2 different times. So I was like, I didn't know which variable was the issue. And because of that, I was getting more and more stressed out. I'd go and I'd be shooting and shooting, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, every time, like, sure, 20 yards are fine, 30 yards, but as I start to stretch it out, like, I'm getting way more flyers than I should have, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So then I was like thinking about it more. So every shot I was like overthinking every shot and like trying to force it to be a perfect shot every time. I think that was making things even worse. And I finally was like, okay, like, this is bigger than like some little weird off day. Like, there's something going on. You need someone else to give you like a second opinion. So I've never like worked with a shooting coach. I've never had a buddy come in that was really good and like look at what I do. Like, literally everything in my shooting, I taught myself how to shoot, and I've just been shooting the way I taught myself how to shoot for 15 years or whatever it's been. So finally, Andy May, our friend who was on the podcast with us last week, I guess, or at the live podcast of the Cutie May convention, I had him come out, and he's really, really serious about his archery and is really good at this stuff. He came out and like started to look at what's going on, and he helped me diagnose a couple issues with my bow setup that I've gotten fixed. And then at the same time, he wanted to look at my shot sequence and process to better understand if I have any like symptoms of target panic. I never really thought I did, but I know I've rushed shots. Like, I know I have the tendency to rush shots, but I never equated that with target panic. I always thought that was just like me rushing it. I never, like, in my mind, I thought those were like 2 different things. But he had me do a couple different exercises that kind of opened my eyes to, like, yes, these are symptoms of like some type of bad thing. Like, for example, he said, okay, just draw back, put the pin in the target, and then don't shoot. But just put your finger on that trigger, but then don't shoot. And like, I did that, and I felt like my body, as soon as I put my finger on that trigger and that pin hit the bullseye, like, my body wanted to hit that trigger so bad. Like, it almost, like, in my head I had like a flinch, like I punched that trigger. And I've had this a couple other times where sometimes when I'm shooting, like, I'll have that where like my whole body like shudders because I wanted to shoot, I wanted to hit the trigger, but I stopped myself. So basically there were some like underlying anticipation issues that I had been like ignoring. So long story short, he helped me reset up my bow, get everything set up properly. Everything's beautiful right now. And then also I am switching to a back tension release process. So I'm not using a back tension release yet. I got a different index finger release, but I'm using a back tension process. So I'm hooking my finger on there tight, and then I'm pulling back with my shoulder blade and my back muscles to release that bow. Instead of, in the past, I'd always just squeeze the trigger with my finger like a gun. And so for the last month or so, since we talked about that, that's what I've been working on. It's a different index finger. It's a much harder break. My old release was like you could squeeze it like halfway down and it wouldn't go off. This new one, it's like it's a hard break. So yeah, I'm working on all this stuff. I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts, different guys who've talked to some archery experts about this kind of stuff. I don't know if you've seen anything from Joel Turner, Iron Mind Hunting. Have you heard anything of his?
No, I haven't, but I'm gonna have to check it out now.
Yeah, check it out. He's been on like the Gritty Bowman podcast, and he's got an online video course. I haven't checked out the full video course yet. I've watched some of his YouTube videos and listened to him, like I said. And he's got some really great thoughts on dealing with this and developing the mental side of this shot sequence and making sure that you're not anticipating and punching and doing these different things. So that's what I've been working on. And so like I've been like starting back at ground zero. Like I took my sight off my bow and I've sat it like 3 yards away from the target, and for a week and a half or 2 weeks I just worked on just getting that release right, just pulling through over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And now I've got the sight back on, and I'm like just doing it at 10 yards, and then just doing it at 15 yards, and just doing it at 20, and just trying to get like a perfect 10 on my release. I'm not worrying about, not worried about holding that pin on there perfect. I'm just trying to get that perfect release, and more so just letting the pin hover. And so my new like shot sequence, like mantra now, again, I pulled this from like Brian Call and Joel Turner, and I've been using it. It's working well for me. It's like I draw back, I immediately lock my trigger, I load up my trigger, I immediately have my finger on the trigger, I splash the pin right on the bullseye. So in my head I say splash it on there, so I get it right there on the dot, and then I watch it keep it. So now I'm just in my mind, I'm just trying to just keep it there, just watch the dot that I'm trying to hit, but I'm not like overly hard trying to aim. I'm just letting it float, but just lasering my eye at the spot I want to hit and letting it float around there. And then once I'm ready, it's all about having like that controlled process. Now the final thing I say is here we go, and as soon as in my mind I say here we go, that activates my back muscles to start slowly pulling until it releases.
Right.
So Joel Turner's thought is that by having words, and we've talked about a mantra before, and I've used some mantras in the past, but I've never like really, really, really done a great job with it. I've always kind of given it lip service, but now I'm trying to like drill it in. It seems like the guys that are really good at this, you use something like that to control your process, so that you're not controlled by the moment. You need to be able to do this stuff like with muscle memory. It needs to be like second nature, but at the same time you can't black out and go into like autopilot at the same time. Like you need to be the one in control of when you decide to shoot that deer. It can't be as soon as the pin happens to be in the right spot, all of a sudden I punch it, which has happened to me in the past.
Yep.
So that is like the Cliff Notes version of what I'm doing right now. But where are you at? I think you're in a similar place, right? But actually, before Dan answers that, we need to take our final break of the day for a word from the Whitetail Institute of North America. And right now, early August, when we're recording this, we are getting into the prime time of fall food plot planning season. So today, our producer, Spencer Newharth, has caught up again with John Cooner to hear about one of Whitetail Institute's best fall food plot options.
This week with Whitetail Institute, we're talking to consultant John Cooner about their special blend of Imperial Whitetail beets and greens, which is designed to hold deer fall all the way through winter.
Beets and greens is a neat product. It is an all brassica product, but it's unusual in that it's a blend of multiple brassica varieties that serve a number of purposes. The main ones are that they provide together attraction and food for deer from the fall all the way into and maybe through the dead of winter. The components are sugar beets. Most folks know how attractive they are to deer when you plant them in the fall. It's got tall tine turnip in it, which is a turnip variety that the Whitetail Institute developed 6 years specifically for deer. The tall tine turnip, the foliage is for late fall through winter. It also has a kale variety in it that is unusual when compared to most kale varieties, and that it's loose-leafed. It's very attractive to deer, and it's a vegetable cultivar that does not grow in a tight head the way a cabbage does. And finally, there's the Whitetail Institute 412 radish that maximizes the attraction over the long term by adding forage and tubers for later in the year. As a secondary benefit, the product, because of the tubers produced by the radish and tall tine tubers, can actually improve this quality, especially of compacted soils, by drilling down even a couple of feet into the soil and making wide spaces that help water and air move, and any tubers that remain after winter will break down the following spring and even improve the quality of soil by adding organic matter. But the main thing is it's built for attraction of deer all the way through fall and through the winter.
If you'd like more info on Whitetail Institute's forage products, check out whitetailinstitute.com, where they also carry some of the top supplements, attractants, and herbicides available.
Yeah, man. I same here. I got a new bow this year as well, and it's a completely different type of bow than anything that's out there. So it's taken me a while to learn how to do it, just like anything that's new. But I decided I was going to, this is just like last month in July, I'm going to buy a back tension release. And although I like it and I think it's going to help me in the long run, I think I made a poor decision by trying to start using a back tension release this close to the actual hunting season.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a much greater learning curve than there is time. And I do not have at this point in my, I don't want to say I have the time, because I try to shoot as much as possible throughout the week, but I don't have enough time to learn the back tension release and to do everything that's necessary to, perfect it like I would need to.
Yeah.
So I shoot a couple rounds with it, and then I will go back to my wrist strap. Or my wrist release. So my question to you is, when you went from, so you didn't necessarily change releases, right? You just use principles from back tension on your current rest, or on your current release.
So no, I did change to a new release as well, but it's still an index finger release. But
gotcha.
The difference is that my old release was like one of the super cheap, I don't know, just one of it was like the same type of release I've used my entire life, like your basic beginner index finger release. But the trigger on that is like, it's got the spring in it, and so you can slowly squeeze that trigger down and it slowly opens, and then you can release it and it closes again. And there's that trigger creep, and from what I understand, that's not really good for getting a good consistent release, especially if you're trying to use back tension. So I got a different release that is like, it doesn't have a spring in it. It's like a hook, it's just the hook style.
Yep.
My old one was the double caliper. This is the hook style. And like, as soon as this hits X pounds of pressure or whatever, it just breaks open. So it's much more conducive to a surprise, clean release. And then it's a much shorter release. So the trigger is much deeper in my finger. The thought process being there is that you've got so many like touch receptors on the point of your finger, the end of your finger, that you're more likely to want to, it's just very touchy. So a lot of us, when you've got the tip of your finger on the trigger, it's just jumpy. You want to push it. You want to pull it like a gun. So the thought process is by putting that trigger deeper into your finger. So now, like at the first knuckle, you're not using that finger anymore. Instead, it's just a hook. So my finger is hooked around the trigger, deep in there, and I've got pressure on that trigger. And then like I'm holding on, I draw, I've got it hooked around the trigger. As soon as I start pulling back with my back and my shoulder, I'm not using my finger at all. It's just like a hook. As soon as I start pulling that back, that releases it.
Okay.
So it's the back tension release type concept, but from these guys and from Andy and everyone says, this is a way to do it. But like you said, there's lots of different. There's a back tension like hinge release. There's like the thumb button type release. Which do you have? Is yours a hinge? Like, do you have no control, or is it?
No, I have the thumb safety on it. It's the knock on.
So it's John Dudley's. Is it the Silverback?
Yep. It's a Silverback from Carter Enterprises.
Yeah.
So it's the Silverback, and that's what I pre-practice with. So yeah, I mean, and it is completely different, but the reason I bought it is because I was at Ben's house, and his release is set up perfect. Like mine's not finely tuned yet to where I need it to be, because I gotta reduce some poundage on it yet. But as soon as I plan on spending a lot more time getting it dialed in. But it's completely different than the trigger finger, and it does make you think. It makes you think about your shot before you actually pull the trigger, because it's making you do something. It's not making you just squeeze the trigger. You have to be aware that you're pulling that extra weight and rotating your back muscle in to make that shot fire.
Yeah. So yours though, you've got it. So as you draw back, you're holding the safety down as you draw back, and then you get to full draw, and then once you're anchored, then you release the safety, And now,
Yep.
as soon as you start pulling through, that tension you put through your back releases it, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So yeah, so then there's another one, like, if I'm no expert, I've never used this, but I think then there's the hinge style that basically is a similar type thing, but there's like a rotating hinge in there that starts turning, and maybe that's how a regular back, maybe I'm talking about the same thing here. But that's another one where you don't have actual control of when the shot goes off. You just need to pull back and pull, and then it's going to release when it releases after you release that safety. And then there's the thumb style where you again pull back, but then you're able to, as you pull back, you push your thumb against a thumb button, which is what actually releases it. I don't know. It sounds like we're both kind of in the early stages of trying to figure this out. And like you said, I wish we'd both started this sooner. But I think it's good. It's like, you know what? Might as well, like for a long time I always thought like I'm good enough. Like, I feel really comfortable shooting out to 40, and some years when I was going elk hunting, I was feeling comfortable shooting farther than that. And I always thought like, yeah, I got it pretty good, like pretty consistent. I feel comfortable out there getting shots at deer, but every once in a while, I'd have a rush shot or I'd have something go wrong, and I kind of would chalk that up to, I made a mistake in the moment. But maybe there's like some deeper things going on that I can fix, and if I can fix it, why not try to? So that's
some demons that we have to fight.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to do now, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see how we progress.
I just want to become an overall better archer too.
Sure.
It's like you don't always have to be a good hunter to, if you're a good archer, but in order to be a good hunter or bow hunter, I feel you should be the best possible archer you should be. And I'm not the best possible archer I should be, so I wanted to improve my basic skills, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. You should take a listen to that the stuff from Joel Turner. Like I said, I haven't done the course yet. I mean, I can't like recommend the course because I haven't done it yet, but I'm planning on it. And the stuff I've heard from him has been interesting. I think Kevin Morrow mentioned him on our podcast with him last couple months ago. We talked about target panic a little bit with him, and he mentioned the name Joel Turner, but I hadn't like heard of him before, so it didn't like register. But when I finally went and checked out his stuff, it's been very helpful for me. So you might find that helpful. And I'm going to try to get we're working on getting Levi Morgan on the podcast here soon, and we'll talk some archery stuff with him soon, and some other guys too. So hopefully we'll have some opportunities to keep learning as we get closer to the season. So yeah, man. That's our shot stuff. We've talked about our goals. Do you have any like not related to like killing a deer or like a certain deer or anything like that, but do you have any goals this year? Every year I feel like we always have some kind of like intangible goals or like some experiential goals or anything, or just like, I don't know, is there anything this year you hope to, like, when you come out of the season, something you'll have done something, or I don't know, do you have any intangible goals? I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but is there anything that comes to mind as I'm rambling?
Yeah, as far as hunting itself, not necessarily killing, but the overall, like, deer hunting overall.
Yeah.
Well, mine would be the access. Like, in order for me to know if I really am disturbing the property driving in from the one side, I have got to use the access routes, from the cricks. And if I can do that, and it shows me that, A, there's not a big difference, or B, there is a big difference, I will know. And as we all know, knowledge is power, and, it allows you to do some crazy things. I think that if I can just follow through with that and learn from what that access tells me about the farm, I think I'll be in a much better place to finally get a piece of property kind of figured out. Because although I have a good idea of how my property works, I don't know it as detailed and as anally as I want to know it. Like, I want to know where these deer are specifically bedding. And yes, I know where bedding areas are, but I don't know specific beds on specific winds. And that's how detailed I want to know this farm when it's all said and done.
Right. Do you find, were you able, I don't think we talked about this at all this spring, so I don't know if you did or didn't, but were you able to scout out and look for specific beds like that this spring, or is that something you want to try to do this coming off season?
Well, it's kind of difficult. And I talked to oh man, I forget his name. Man, he's gonna be pissed at me. But anyway, we discussed the difference between, like Dan Infalt gives really awesome detailed advice on how to find buck beds and hunt buck beds. Well, on my farm and in this terrain, deer period have so many different beds based off of all these different winds on different fingers and different terrain features, that a buck bed in marsh country doesn't look like a buck bed where I'm at. So it's going to be harder to find. Those deer move from season to season. They move on food sources, they move on wind direction, and so it's a little bit more difficult for me to go in and find specific beds when there's so many variables. So and the guy I talked with, he kind of was like, okay, here's what you need to look for. He's on the hunting beast as well. So he sent me a document of what I need to look for based off of pure terrain features off of a topo map. So I'm going to check those places out this year and basically just try to be as observant as humanly possible to the most detail, to as detailed as humanly possible.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know. So is your farm, but I'm talking about, like, my main farm is like 400. So I probably have about 500 acres all together in this one area. They're different property owners and whatnot, but they're all in this specific area, and they all in some way, shape, or form run into each other. And, I want to figure out not only the micro, but I want to figure out the macro as well. So on your lease in Ohio, what's that, like 130 acres?
No, it's 90. And
90, okay.
And of that, there's like 35 that's huntable. Really, the rest is a field. It's right. maybe 40, but it's such a small area. Like, there's nothing to it almost. There's big open field, and there's 2 fingers of timber that come into the field. And so I know there's a little bit of bedding on the smaller finger, and then on the bigger finger, there's the finger is created because there's this ditch there's a creek that runs out towards the field, and so there's like that really low spot, the ditch in the middle, like deep, like valley, I guess, and then there's ridges that run on either side. So then there's bedding on either one of those ridges, like the little knobs that come off those ridges. There's bedding, some doe bedding, the big thick. There's some cutovers on it, and a couple knobs with cedars and stuff, and that's where usually a buck, if there's a good buck in the area on that piece bedded, usually it seems like that's one of those spots that he's likely to be on occasion. So it's not one of those spots that has like a ton to figure out. I could see like 400, 500 acres. There's a lot to sink your teeth into and try to figure that out. In a smaller property like this, it's kind of like, well, you got this. So there's not as much to work with, but at the same time, it's not as much of a challenge because okay, they're going to move through A or B, and then it just becomes like being there at the right time and being there enough. So it's limiting because I don't have very many options, but at the same time it makes it a little bit less stressful because it's either going to happen or it's not in one of these 2 places, basically 2 or 3 places. That's kind of where we've come with the property. At first I was like, oh wow, like trying to figure all these different things out, and now like 5 years into it, I kind of know, okay, there's a couple spots that's going to be here, and then we've got a bunch of other stands and kind of like tertiary places that are, you could see one maybe long range and call one in or something. Like last year, I was hunting not in one of like the best spots, but a spot I could see a long ways and be called to something, and that ended up working out. But it's definitely not one of those big properties where, even like my Michigan property, most of the core stuff is like on neighbors. I'm kind of my main Michigan property that we talk about so much. It's mostly field again. I've got a little area of cover in the front that I hunt where I made that food plot system, and in the back corner I've got a chunk of cover. Everything else is like field edge, and I'm just kind of hoping to catch deer coming off the neighbors because just the limits of my property that I have there kind of force me to that.
Yeah, and you've been on my farm before, and you know how that big block of timber right?
Oh man,
I mean, it's just
big country.
Fingers everywhere going up, this valley, and I don't know.
It's like an awesome.
I got to find the. Yeah, it's an awesome puzzle.
Right, it's awesome, but at the same time very challenging because there's so many different moving pieces and areas, and I can see that being a big challenge. Just like, and I imagine you're probably doing this, but I bet when you first started hunting, you were kind of going willy-nilly all over the place because you had so much space to work with. You're like, I'll hunt over here, I'll hunt over here, I'll hunt over here.
Yep.
But now, based on the things I'm hearing from you, I feel like you're fine-tuning, like, okay, there's this big area, there's tons of places, but now I know there's these 5 or 6 core places that if I hunt them smartly, access them smartly, like, I think over time you're able to drill down a property, a large area like that probably, but there's still more fine-tuning, right?
Right. And I'll be honest with you, there's a chance that, and they do it every year, I kill a buck out of the same exact tree stand that I shot this year's buck in. It's just because it is the greatest staging area of all time, and they make their way through it, and they check a couple scrapes before they go out to feed, and I'm just excited to hunt that one as well. So I don't know. I'm overall excited. The velvet pictures are coming in, and my blood's starting to boil. My wife sees that, and then she's just like, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. All right, so we should probably wrap this up because you gotta get going soon, I think. But I don't know if we can if you've got something off the top of your head, let's roll with it, or maybe we think about it till next week. But I think in the past we've given each other like challenges for the year, and we've said, okay, I want you to try to do one thing this year, and you tell me something you want me to try to do this year. Do you have any challenge? Do you want to try to take a stab at making a challenge right now, or do you think we should think about this?
I think we should think about it.
Okay, well then let's.
Do you have something?
I had a couple ideas, but you're probably right. It's probably better to like take a little time, think about the challenge, and then we should put some stakes on it too. So let's think of a challenge for each other. Let's think of some kind of stakes to put on it, and then we'll have a little something to go for this year.
Hey, I like that idea. Another bet.
Yes, a friendly, fun bet. I'm gonna lose my bet with Corey, so I want a chance to try to win one with you at least. All right,
sounds
dude.
good, man.
Well, anything else we should cover before we go?
I don't think so. Just as the season starts coming up, and you guys start getting into content mode, be sure you go back to past episodes of the all the Wired to Hunt guests that we've had. I mean, how many podcasts have we put out now?
163, I think, or 4,
okay.
Somewhere around there. A lot.
So in that 163, there's a ton of great information that you guys can listen to put yourself in a better position on whatever property that you're hunting. So take the time to go do that.
Yeah, the archives, especially for people that found the podcast more recently, maybe started listening this year, there's years worth of episodes that the content, the stuff we talk about with these guests, it's still applicable today by far. So definitely go back. There's the podcast link on the website, or you can go on iTunes or your podcast app or whatever, scroll back. There's some, okay, really quick. What's one of your favorite past guests we've had on? If you could recommend an episode right now from maybe the first year or two that you can think of, any that you'd recommend off the top of your head?
Oh, man. Put me on the spot. Let's see here. Well, obviously it's always interesting to hear the thoughts of Mark Drury, right?
Yeah. Episode number 63.
Yep. So, you got that. But I also really enjoy the one we did with Bronson Strickland, right?
Yeah.
And just like I'm a kind of a nerd, so the science, knowing the science and biology about a whitetail is, in my opinion, just as important as knowing the terrain and the the strategy and where they live.
Yeah. Speaking of science, we did one with Matt Ross in November of 2015. It was about the science of the rut. That was a really good one.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, what else? Our 2 early episodes of Dan Infault are classics. They were really good ones from the first year. Yep. What's another good one? I really liked our 2 Steve Bartilla episodes. Our first one with Bartilla in 2014 is an oldie but a goodie. Jeff Sturgis. We had an episode with Jeff Sturgis 2 years ago in the fall where we talked about like cold fronts and pre-rut and stuff like that. That's full of gold.
Hey, you know who we need to have on again?
Who's
Just
that?
because I think the guy's cool is hunter gatherer cook guy.
Oh yeah, Hank Shaw.
Hank Shaw, yeah.
Yes.
I could bullshit with that guy for a little bit.
Yeah, he threw in Star Wars references. I liked that. Did you ever get his Buck Moose book?
I did not.
You should get it. Buck Moose.
Okay.
It's a cookbook. It's really good. It's all venison, all types of stuff for deer, moose, elk, whatever. And his jerky recipe in there is the very best jerky I've ever had. So that's the one I use now for all my jerky, and highly, highly recommend it. So there you go.
Awesome.
There's our recommendations. Well, my buddy, good chatting with you. Glad we could catch up, and we'll chat next week.
Until next time.
And with that, we will wrap this one up. But I've got a couple quick closing reminders for you. First, like we just mentioned, if you're new to the podcast, definitely go back through the archives. We have so many great episodes with expert guests that I think you'll find beneficial. And we've been doing this for, 3.5, coming up on 4 years now. So there's a ton of content out there for you to dig into. And you can find that on your podcast app, or you can go to wiredtohunt.com and click on the podcast link, and you'll see all of them right there. So secondly, speaking of, if you're not following our blogs and videos and other articles over on wiredtohunt.com, I'd highly recommend you do that too. Almost every day we've got new content going up there, so check that out. And the same goes for the Wired Hunt social media. So follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Moving on, of course, we want to give a big thanks to our partners at Sitka Gear, Yeti Coolers, Matthews Archery, Maven Optics, Whitetail Institute of North America, Trophy Ridge, and Huntera Maps. Their support, it's incredible, and we couldn't do this podcast without them. So big thanks. And finally, of course, thank you to all of you out there listening. Your time and your attention and your support, it just means the world. So thank you. And until next time, I hope you'll spend a little time thinking through your own goals and hopes for this season. And I hope you'll stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.